What up, nerds? Welcome to episode 42 of the Unwind, a weekly show where we talk about tech, games, gadgets, and geek culture. My name is Rob Steller.
I'm Sean Thomas.
And I'm Josiah Hells.
So, this is episode 42, and as Josiah pointed out to me, that is the answer to life.
The meaning of life.
The meaning of life. So, we thought that we would try something new, and, well, actually, not new, because we used to record on video on, well, some of us had crappy webcams back when we started this on Hangouts, but now that we all sit together and we actually get to see our faces, we thought, hey, you guys should see our faces too.
We know you've been waiting to see us again.
Yes, so now we are going to be on the YouTubes and other, as much media as we could possibly get ourselves onto.
It's basically YouTube.
But anyway,
Daily Motion, maybe.
Yes, so I saw Inception for the first time.
Inception?
Yes, it was a fantastic movie.
You just saw it?
Yeah, I saw it just for the fact that people would stop me, oh, you haven't seen Inception yet? And then I thought that movie was so good, and Christopher Nolan is apparently amazing, that I went and saw Interstellar like 2 days after that, which was also very good. So now there are two of like the top 5 movies I've ever seen. Number 1 being Shaun of the Dead. That's not going to change.
So on your rating scale, they'd both be very good, right? That's from...
I think there's an excellent on my rating scale.
Oh,
it's a 5-point scale.
I just assumed the top was Farscape. It went from...
It's not a movie. Oh, I guess if you count the miniseries.
Cinema, television...
Anyway,
similar.
my point is that Sean always likes to point out that most video games have not caught up to the writing that is in books and movies and other forms of media. So I chose to ignore that for the most part because I apparently don't watch good media or read good books. So that changed once I saw these two movies. I was like, oh, this is apparently what I'm missing. This is really good. But anyway, we got 3 good topics for you today, so let's jump into them.
All right, Sean, you're starting us off.
So what I wanted to talk about is recently Apple made an update to Siri to make it work a lot better. Now, we haven't really seen it yet, but basically the idea is it's going to know a little bit more of your information and know more about Google Now, more like Google Now, where it figures out stuff that's going on and it can give you updates on that. And recently, especially with Edward Snowden and a lot of other leaks, and you think about how many hacks happen in Target and Home Depot, there's always a question of privacy. How important is it? So I guess I want to ask you. Well, it's funny. It's one of those things where I think a lot of people say, if you ask them the question, they'll say, yeah, it's important. But how much do people care about it when there's a service that's useful? Perfect example is Google. Mm-hmm. Google mines a lot of your information, but they have awesome services. Arguably, almost all of their services are the best, like search, maps, Google Now, things like that. And do you think people actually care as long as they're getting stuff? I mean, Edward Snowden, that situation is a little bit different because that's the government mining. But, in the same way, they argue that they're protecting us. So where do you think the balance is? Do you think people actually give a shit, or they just say it because they feel like it's a good idea?
Yeah, I think, as far as actions go, most people don't care that much. I will say that, I don't use Google Now. Mm-hmm. And when I use Google Search on my phone, it's I'm not logged in. Mm-hmm. So because
your phone is useless.
Yeah, because I don't want them. No, it works, but I don't want them to combine GPS and search data and all this other stuff, right? So I just don't log into Google Now, and even sometimes when I'm on my computer, I'll actually go into incognito mode before I use Google. So
you're the one person who uses incognito mode for the reasons it lists on there.
So I don't do certain things through Amazon, and I will never buy an Amazon piece of hardware because I don't want them to have that information, right? So basically, my point is that I spread out my accounts.
Mm-hmm. Try to confuse them.
Yeah, I don't want one comprehensive, because I don't feel like the value is that amazing right now, the value proposition, like the extra, when I'm logged in and I buy a pair of shoes, for the next 2 weeks I'm going to get ads on shoes.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm giving up. Like, I give you all my private data so you can give me more advertising on exactly what I just bought. I just bought a plane ticket.
I like to actually, so
more deals on
I have a
plane
counterpoint.
tickets
I have
back
a counterpoint. I like to feel bad about the purchases I just made, so I want to see ads about better deals than what I paid for.
You already have an Oculus. Would you like the older Oculus too?
Well,
it's great for you. I wonder how confused Audible is because you go from D&D and stuff to Twilight. And I don't know if it's trying to figure out if it should send you teenage romance novels or it should be sending you, nerd stuff.
Yeah. Well, funny you mentioned that. So I have Amazon Prime and I watch movies on that sometimes. So this movie came up as recommended, and it was Korean language, right? So I was like, all right, I'll check it out. And the story was this guy was a professor on film, and then his son was like trying to get into like a celebrity chef type situation, right? So he's apprenticed to this woman, and in between the plot there was lots and lots of sex apparently. So I never actually finished the movie. I just stopped watching it. It's not terribly interesting. And then every time I go on Prime now, it's like basically trying to push these Skinamax type movies. I'm like, oh great, this is great. See, so I mean, it's the same thing. These algorithms are broken as far as I'm concerned, because I've been using Amazon Prime to watch stuff for like 3 years now, and the one movie that I watch, and for me, the reason I watched it was Korean, and I'm half Korean, and like the thing they key in on is, there was sex in the movie. So I have like French sex movies, I have Chinese sex movies, and so
I like a diverse range of sex films. Yeah. So I take the opposite approach. I like the usefulness that data brings when you're using these types of apps. Like I like everything to be connected. Like, I mean, ideally, I know there's there's always that trade-off. Like when does it become scary that they know so much about you?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I like the benefits that these apps can provide by saying like, oh, you usually order pizza right now, so we're gonna just give you pizza. It's like, all right,
for breakfast, you like pizza. We've already delivered it.
Yeah. Or especially when it comes to fitness too. Like I'm all about trying to collect as much data around that to try to live a healthier lifestyle.
And with to me, the fitness example is actually the one that I would probably find the most helpful. Like if it were really comprehensive. I've had a Fitbit for a while, and you can see I've stopped wearing it because I didn't feel like there was a lot of value coming from it, because the data that it collects, it doesn't give you recommendations or suggestions on that, and it's not saying, oh well, you ate this much and you ran this much and you're sleeping this much, try mixing these things up. Right? If it started giving me advice, that would be really valuable. But to me, that's actually next to GPS location data. That's the most that data is what I would like to keep the most private. Mm-hmm. Like if that stuff got hacked, I mean, I would not be very comfortable with that at all.
So I mean, but you touched on two different things. One thing was that the algorithm didn't work well enough. So if you felt
I bring up the algorithm because you're giving there's a trade-off proposition, right? Privacy for better services.
Yeah.
But I'm saying the services are broken. They feel broken to me.
So, but that's what I'm asking. If they worked, say you were doing something and you realized, wow, actually that is something I would want, or this worked well. Would that make you want to give up a little more privacy, or I would say you're more unique in that you understand your privacy and you know how the systems work. So, from that perspective, is this something that you're going to lean towards doing more as the services get better, or are you just kind of going to say, if I can avoid it, I'm going to avoid it?
The two big ones for me are data sets that I don't want to really give out, right? I think so. Siri can do this locally, right? So it doesn't have to ping a server. But basically, if I have a meeting and it knows my GPS location and it says, hey, you actually need to leave now because traffic is building up. That to me would be really cool, and I think they can do that locally on the phone instead of pinging back. Google,
I don't see why
Google doesn't, but I think Apple, with the new iteration of Siri in iOS 9, I think they will be doing that. So that kind of geofencing, GPS location data. The other piece, like I said, health data, and I'm not comfortable with that, with the value added yet, mainly because I know the type of comprehensive service that I just described doesn't exist on any platform right now. So
you like vegetables? Would you like kale? No, Google, I never want kale.
So it's you ask the question. It's not even an option for me right now as far as the health piece and the location data piece. It isn't. It will be an option soon, and I think I will take advantage of it on the Apple platform because they're going to do it in a reasonably private way.
I think, well, so the interesting thing about Apple is they've definitely been outspoken. They're going to think about privacy heavily, which is good. But then we have to see how well do the services work if they can.
Yeah.
And that's the real question. I mean, we can't really know one way or the other till it comes out. But I mean,
where do you stand on this then?
Well, so it's kind of like I was where Josiah was until I started using the services, and it worked. And so there was that situation where, I mean, I don't know exactly why, but obviously you don't want to give up private details about yourself. But then there's that situation where you get in where, I mean, I use Google Now a lot, and even targeted ads, a lot of times they do work. Like, there are things where I'm like, oh, I actually was thinking about that. For example, just random things. I'll be on websites and there'll be clothing companies that I've never heard of, and they'll advertise, and I think about using them, or things like that. And the problem that comes in is, the thing with giving up your privacy is it's that unknown factor. I don't know what they're going to do.
Right.
So until right now, it feels like, okay, whatever, who cares? They're selling ads against me, and they're selling to companies. Who cares? Really, the question is, what can they do it either in a hack or them doing it themselves? What are they going to use with that information?
Right.
So the problem is you don't really know what you're giving up, and that's why many people like myself are okay with giving it up, because, I mean, it's not the same argument, but people always said in defense of the NSA, it's like, well, if you have nothing to hide, what's the point? But it's really a bigger question than that. And I will say, like a robot, I just give in, and I don't know.
Well, I don't want to sound like an alarmist, but when you start
real
to,
life. Okay, just get out of here.
when you get these big data sets, you start to see these really crazy patterns that literally you could not see before. And then the other piece is, well, how much of this becomes
Skynet?
well, how much of it becomes like influence behavior, right? So they're not just saying, oh, Josiah does these things, maybe we should get ready for him to do this, because that's the next step based on in the tea leaves. But when does it become, well, we want him to remember these things, so we'll start changing what he sees and to therefore change his behavior, right? So that
was
to me
kind
is
of like
scary.
with the Apple Watch, it pings you every hour or two to say to get up.
To stand
and
up.
so, I don't know, I wonder how many people actually use that feature. I was actually watching Twit, and apparently, Leo Laporte actually does
up,
it.
right? Yeah.
He does. Which, random side note, the one I was listening to, they said when they were back at Tech TV, there's one episode where he just got naked and streaked across the stage.
Yeah.
Which,
what's wrong with that?
what's it? Leo Laporte
I
goes
think he
naked?
got shirtless, but not
Okay, that would
necessarily
make a
naked,
little more
but,
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
if I
Anyway.
did that, everyone would be blinded because of these lights. So I promise you that will not happen.
So let's move on to
That's how
another
you
service.
transition.
Let's move on to another service. So we were talking about like Google Now and Siri type services. So another service that just came out from Apple is Apple Music, right? So I remember when we were talking about WWDC and they announced this and we were kind of debriefing about it. One of the big question marks for me was, will it replace Beats Music?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is yes, quite simply. So when I did the update earlier this week, and I opened up Beats Music, and it says Beats Music is now Apple Music. Please log in over there, and or do you want to transfer your account?
Is there a big picture of Dr. Dre with $1 billion? Yep.
Money. Yeah, that's basically what it was. So I just want to debrief or talk a little bit about the service and give my thoughts on it and ask you guys if you've used it. I've tried to test with you guys, so we can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
But the basic gist of it is, let me pull up Apple Music. So it's got a For You section, so it's taking your data and trying to figure out like what do you like. And Apple has a long history of this, with the Genius playlist.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not quite as comprehensive as Pandora's Genome Project, but they've kind of got their own thing. And then Beats Music also had this where you could heart things, and then based on that, and it also did this bubble setup at the beginning of when you logged in, and then you can go back in at any time and change it. So
yeah, it sounds like curated playlists and that kind of stuff is what people liked about Beats, and that's what they kept. The one thing they kept from Beats.
Yeah, and I never really used it in Beats. I used it a couple times just because I was like, oh, I never used this, let's try it. And it wasn't mind-blowingly awesome.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'll just play my own music.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times the other thing about it was I'd hear something and say, oh, well, that kind of reminds me of this other song that I like. And in Beats, there wasn't a really good way to add to the playlist.
Oh,
but actually in Apple Music, you can. There's an up next feature. So at any time to any playlist, you can just say, you can edit the playlist and add a song, and you can easily slide up and down where do you want that song to play next.
Oh, okay.
So if I'm listening to a song and I was like, oh, this reminds me of whatever, Florence and the Machine, I go find that song and add it. And the nice thing is I can add it from my library or search Apple Music, so the cloud service. So from that standpoint, it works pretty well. A couple other things. It's got a new section. It's got the radio, the Beats One radio service. Not a fan.
Radio.
Yeah. Not a fan at all. There's a reason.
Which DJ have you listened to so far? Because there's Zane, there's
I've listened to all
Ebro,
three. Yeah.
and I don't know who the woman is. I've never heard of her.
I can't pronounce her last name.
Okay, but you've heard all of them?
I've heard all three, and it's not interesting to me. It's just like people, it's the same reason why I stopped listening to terrestrial radio. I mean, there are no outright ads per se yet, but it's a lot of advertising the next thing that's going to happen. And like with on-demand stuff, I was just like, no, just tell me, just do the next thing. You don't need to tell me for the next 15 minutes, oh yeah, we're gonna have the Eminem interview, it's gonna be awesome, and this is the first time. Yeah, no goddamn, it's the first time this is on the radio. So yeah, of course it's your, so it's just ridiculous. I don't need people talking over the music. Like, oh yeah, this is really good. Listen for this beat right here, and it's so awesome, and this is house music, and blah.
I
do
am the
that,
opposite.
and I'm like,
I need
this
to
is
know
insane.
exactly when to listen to the beat. I am the whitest person ever. I have no rhythm, and if they don't tell me when it is, then I will miss the beat.
But you know what's funny? I agree with that, but I think the whole point of the radio, like I feel like that's why I moved away from radio, but I feel like the whole point of that Beats One radio is to bring back that radio.
No,
because you can do the For You if you just want to listen to music.
I
And
agree.
So,
I
but
agree. And all I'm saying is it doesn't speak to me.
Sure.
I'm not saying it's going to be a failure because of that. I'm sure, if you think about it, like terrestrial radio at any given time might have, 100,000 listeners because of the range of radio and that sort of thing. And this is going to easily have 1 million people listening to it at the same time. To a live show.
I want millions of people listening to
So
me.
it's pretty interesting. Couple other things, they've got Connect in there. I played around with it just on a
The mic's not Connect, right?
It's really passive. It's just like, here's what Pharrell says about his new video, which is basically,
It's good.
hey, I made this new video, you should check it out. Oh, okay, great. I don't need to have that. So, and then finally, the last button on the bottom is My Music, and then you can, like I said before, you can either play stuff in the cloud or well, it can all come from the cloud, but it basically could be either stuff you've purchased or ripped, or just their digital library for streaming.
This may be a dumb question. Is this replacing just the regular music app on the phone?
Yes, not a dumb question.
Got it.
So yep. So the next time you update your phone and you go click on the music app,
It'll be this,
the color is different. Like it's got like a little.
That's awful. I'm so used to the other color. How am I going to know?
Yeah, because the other color. It's been the other color for a year and a half.
What about just like the UI of it and just how how easy is it?
I've only seen screenshots, but it looks beautiful.
Yeah,
It does look nice.
But I
it
haven't
looks
used it.
it looks nice, but it's really
Busy?
I don't want to say busy. It's just really condensed, and I am running with an iPhone 5S, so my screen is a little bit smaller.
Oh,
Maybe on a 6 or a 6 Plus, it's spaced out enough, but I just feel like things are really scrunched up, and I don't feel like that had to be the case. Like they could have gone smaller on the cover art and made the controls a little bit bigger. And so I talked about those 5 different things on the menu, and the placement of those things on the menu are kind of counterintuitive to me, so that menu is on the bottom rather than on the top. And the problem I have with that is because the For You button is a heart. And for the last year and a half, when you see the heart while you're playing music, you tap that, and that's to say, I like this song, play more of it. Right? But now you tap that, and it takes you to another tab in the app. So it's really confusing. It's kind of jarring. So just a couple of things like that. I think I don't want to say it's
It's
busy.
failure. That's failure.
I don't want to say it's busy, but it's just weird design choices as far as I'm concerned. A couple other things that I thought were interesting. So my playlist did port in from Beats Music, but it took about a day. And it seemed to be kind of a rolling thing because I updated on my Mac and it was there within about 10 minutes. And I had updated on my phone and it didn't show up until the next morning. So that was a little
Web
weird.
services, man.
And then the last thing I'll say about this is that some of the songs, especially the songs that came from my Beats playlist, when I tap on them, some of them can take up to 65 seconds, 70 seconds, I actually counted, before they start playing.
Wow.
That's weird.
So I think it's like remapping things,
Yeah.
from the old playlist to
just going to Dr. Dre's computer. And
and there's so much chronic there. It's
Yeah.
slow. But so overall, though, I think it's really good. It's as good as other things, with a few extras like the Beats One radio and the Connect stuff. But like I said, those don't speak to me at all.
I mean, looking at it, so it feels like it's the app that can do everything. I mean, it literally has every service. I mean, you could say, like, for example, I think Google Play Music, you have YouTube, but that's just a different service, so it's not like that big. But it feels like it has everything. Connect has something with artists, For You is curating playlists and things like that. It has a radio. The only downside, I think, to that is, does it ever feel like it's too much? I always find it funny that, and I know it's because it's the last tab, everybody mentions my music last, which I would think your music would
be the most important thing.
Yeah.
Right?
And I know a big part of it is curating playlists, and also I'm sure to some degree they want you to use their service and look at their new music, so they want you to buy stuff, so they're going to have a focus on that.
Yeah.
But in my thinking is, if I use Apple Music, it's probably more because it just works. I don't think there's anything about it that makes me think this is better.
Yeah.
Like for example, Connect. Connect is a social network, and I'm of the opinion there has to be some kind of cool factor for it's very difficult to become a social
You're
network.
not on any social networks.
No, you look at Snapchat, Tumblr, Imager, like there's something young and like even Facebook, some people feel like it's getting old.
Yeah.
I personally don't think Apple can pull it off, and it's going to be heavily dependent on whether or not artists care.
Yeah,
we'll
I
see.
think there's a chance that, especially if some of the indie artists and stuff like that start using it, then it will kind of draw in their crowds and, bring some of that cool factor with it. So I think there's a chance, but, it's just not how I want to interact with the app. So, but I get what you're saying. It does have a lot packed in there, and I think that's the case, though. It's like people are going to have to figure out what 2 out of the 5 or 6 things that this has do they actually want to.
But at the end of the day, that's more about a learning curve, right?
Yeah.
Once you figure out, I mean, it has everything at the end of the day, and it's not. I don't think it'd be a step down going to any service. It doesn't seem.
I
like
will say that the
Spotify
one thing that it doesn't have included is the digital locker. So it's a little deceptive.
Yeah.
Because if you've purchased music through iTunes over the years, that stuff will automatically be in the cloud and you can stream it. That's been the case for the last 2 years. But you have to use iTunes Match if you've ripped stuff or purchased it from, let's say, like Amazon or something like that.
Does that come with? Because I know you used to pay $25 a year.
Yeah,
right?
it's $25 a year. So it's relatively cheap. But that's the only way you can get into the digital locker, a true digital locker.
It's hilarious because, come on, how much revenue, $25 a year, they could have just eaten that cost.
Yeah, I think eventually they're probably going to need to do that.
Yeah, because it's just not, I can't imagine that it makes enough money for them, for them to care.
Yeah.
$25 a year, even if you had like a ton of people on that, it's just not that much.
Yeah, so it's pretty good. And we'll see how it pans out. But I think we were talking a couple weeks ago about this, and I this is not original to me. Several people have said this out in the blogosphere, but I really think the competition is not between Spotify and Tidal and all these other apps. It's to get people who don't currently stream music, and I think they have a really good shot at that.
And well, I mean, that's a big question. Can this help save the music industry? Because people just are not buying CDs. So, and the funny thing too, so people have been notably against Spotify. A lot of artists like Taylor Swift, Tom York, and there are other people, I think Adele. And a lot of these artists, a major get was when Taylor Swift put 1989 on Apple Music. But another funny thing is, so Tom York was specifically against Spotify. His albums still aren't on Spotify. His albums, not Radiohead. I don't know if Radiohead's on. But he did put it on Apple Music, which seems like a big get. But the funny thing is, it's also on Google Play Music and like Audio. It almost feels like I want to make a statement. There aren't enough people on Google Play Music for us to give a shit, so we're just going to leave it on there anyway. And who knows, maybe he'll remove it from it later. Yeah. But either way, the one positive thing is I think artists, it seems like they want to get behind this. Like, they know streaming is going to be somewhere. A lot of indie artists sign on to Apple Music, and, I mean, it's cheaper to create music, but it's clear that the music industry is really flagging. And hopefully maybe this could spell the end for labels, or at least make them contract. Because
I don't feel like I want that to happen. I'm not trying to kill any industry out there, but I just feel like it's the next logical step, and I'm kind of surprised it hasn't started to happen, or maybe it is, and I don't have my finger on the pulse enough to know that it's happened. But I really expect that labels just to fall by the wayside. I mean, what value do artists get from labels? And when that value proposition is not large enough anymore, it doesn't make sense for labels to exist.
I think some indies are just scared to go. Like, even if they're indies, just going without a label. And there's a lot of crap you just don't want to do. If you're an artist, you want to make art. You don't want to deal with promotion. But it really is so much easier.
I guess when I say labels, like, some of these indie labels. So labels that are newly designed to be more agile and lower overhead than the old traditional labels like Sony, Columbia, and Warner Brothers Music, and all these others, Vista and
Interscope, EMI. Let's just keep going.
All right, so let's move on to our question of the week, which is brought to you by Audible, where you can sign up for a free 30-day trial and get a free audiobook download by going to audibletrial.com/rollthehit.
It's messing you up.
I know, as if I haven't done that enough already. What are you listening to right now?
What am I listening to? So I finished Reality is Broken by Jay McGonigal. That was good. And then I did a really quick one, Stardust by Neil Gaiman. And the really cool thing about that was that he actually narrated it himself. Nice. So that was really cool. And they included this nice interview of him after the text. So that was really cool, but that was about 6 hours, so it went by really quickly. And now I'm starting Martian. So by Andy Weir. So that's going to be a movie with Matt Damon. And so it came out a little while ago. My brother told me about it, and I was interested, and so now it's bubbled up. It's about a gentleman who goes to
a gentleman or a Martian.
A gentleman.
Spoiler alert: the Martian is a human. So it's about a mission to Mars, the third manned mission to Mars, according to this timeline. And within the first 3-4 days, something goes terribly wrong, and they have to evacuate. And this guy, it looks like, well, he actually does get impaled on the way to the evacuation vehicle, and he's left for dead. And he's not dead, so he's trying to figure out.
Wow.
You find all this out.
Check out audible.com to see what happens.
You find this out so very quickly. So it's the rest of the book is how does he survive long enough to let people know that he survived.
This is the prequel to 127 Hours. Somebody who can't move and is injured.
So anyway, you can get that book and more by going to audibletrial.com/rollthehit. And our question of the week, given that I've seen 2 of Christopher Nolan's movies in the last week,
believe in aliens,
is what is your favorite Christopher Nolan movie?
Can I go first?
Yeah.
Prestige.
Wow, that was quick.
Yeah. It's good.
Sean?
Oh, God, I don't know.
He actually hasn't done a ton of movies. Like,
True.
So Doodlebug was the first one. I'm assuming that's not true. Following, Memento is another one that I guess I have to see.
Memento's good.
Memento's good.
The Batman movies, obviously.
Yep.
Prestige, Inception.
I didn't know he did Insomnia.
Yes. Man of Steel, Transcendence. He was involved in those, producing. Interstellar.
Transcendence. I
Yeah.
haven't even heard of that. Which one is that?
Well, I guess that's not your pick, is it?
No, I feel like he has a pretty varied number of movies, or his movies are pretty varied, because Prestige, I feel like, is very different than Interstellar. But I guess they have not a fantasy, but kind of science fiction theme to a lot of them, in that they're, I hate this phrase, but thought-provoking. I don't know. There's something, there is some kind of twist.
and things that they seem real enough, but then they do things that you can't do in real life. Like, things happen that can't happen in real life.
I've been trying to Inception Sean.
I'm asleep. Nikola Tesla is not real.
Yeah, I can't really talk about the Prestige too much, because the other thing is, in a lot of these movies, there's kind of this big
twist,
reveal.
Right? Yeah.
But on the surface, it's kind of this competitive relationship between two magicians, two performers.
Magician movie.
Yeah.
And then it just blows your mind, what they try to do to one up each other, and what one guy does to one up the other. You're like, holy cow, that's amazing and maybe immoral. And then the other thing, the other trick that the other guy does, you're like, he took a totally different avenue to do this trick, but it's equally mind-blowing and immoral.
You won't believe how many rabbits come out of that. It's insane.
So many rabbits.
It's just rabbits on rabbits on rabbits. It's ridiculous.
Alright, what's your pick then?
I guess I kind of want to say Interstellar. Maybe it's probably just because I just saw it. And even though it meanders a lot, there was something, I got a feeling from it that I liked a lot. And I like the soundtrack a lot. But
yeah, soundtrack was really good.
I've seen, I'll put it this way, the movies I don't like as much. I didn't like Insomnia as much, and I didn't like, I guess the third Batman movie, and there's one other movie I didn't like as much. I forgot what
I like the third Batman movie.
That was fun.
Thomas Hardy, like, the voice was too hard to understand. I mean, his delivery and his speech pattern was fine, but just the wire mesh, whatever that does to your voice, it was just too hard to understand.
I will say though, if you want to make a unique character, it worked. Kind of like everybody knows what the Joker kind of sounds like.
That's true.
He did make, iconic is a wrong word completely, but something that you do right, because everybody was doing the Bane voice after it.
Yeah.
I have to go with Inception. I watched it one night and then I watched it the next night because I was like, I need to watch this
He's
again.
still watching it.
To make
it's
sure
in the
that-
background.
Yeah. I actually went to sleep and then watched it again.
And you're still asleep and watching.
I might be.
You're three letters.
Still spit. Oh, I guess I should say anything.
Oh, ruined. No. Anyway, so yeah, let us know in the comments if you have anything that.
Or if you hate Christopher Nolan, because a lot of people do hate Christopher Nolan.
Oh wow.
But then you're wrong. So, Alright, let's move on to our last topic. So I want to talk a little bit about Windows 10, which is coming out at the end of this month.
That's crazy.
July
You mean
29th.
Windows 9? Because
789, man.
They should just release Windows 95 again. That was great.
Yes.
I want to have that shutdown screen. You can now shut down your computer.
So I've actually been running Windows 10 Preview on my Surface 3 Pro for a while, and I got my old Lumia 920 is now running the mobile preview, which is impressive. That we were talking about this yesterday. It's
that
impressive
phone
that
is
my phone can run
4
it.
years old, 3
Yeah,
and a half
4
years
years old right now.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a ton of big changes that they're pulling back a lot from Windows 8 to try to make Windows 7 people happy who were not happy in the transition. So they are bringing the start menu back. It does look a lot nicer than it did in Windows 7, in my opinion. They brought back live tiles and integrated it into the start menu, which I think is pretty cool. Whatever. So universal apps is the big thing for me. And it's still, obviously the mobile side has been struggling with trying to get developers to come on and make new apps for them. But I think this whole push, and again, we have to see how it looks in practice and whether everything jives. But the idea that I can pay for an app once and then get it across my Xbox One, my PC, and my phone is really appealing to me.
So the fact that you pay once and it works everywhere, that's the most appealing
Well,
thing
that
to you,
and
or?
just having the same app on all of these platforms. So if I'm doing something
but
on my
if
phone,
they
I
do
can
it right, the UI is going to be different on all of those.
Right, but ideally I'll still be able to accomplish the same things whatever platform I'm using. That's my...
I mean, I've been waiting for OneNote on the Xbox for years. I don't know why they didn't get that target right.
Anyway, so there's other changes. So The issue is with Microsoft is that they just suck at telling people what's going on and just communication. Like that's been their biggest shot in the foot this whole time. So what is the case right now, as I understand it, which may or may not be correct because
we have an asterisk at the bottom. It may or may not change.
So anybody running Windows 7 or 8.1 right now will get a free upgrade if you do it within the first year it comes out, and that upgrade will be free for life. So you just you download it and you get it for free. You don't have to pay for it ever, right? Which puts it on par with OS X, which has been doing this, like you said, for a few years now. I think you said, right? Yeah. So you'll get Windows 10 for free as long as you're on the last 2 operating systems. Other than that, you know, if you wanted to buy it outright, I think it's $120 for the base price, which was the same as Windows 8.1.
Wait, is that for Windows Home, Windows Home Premium, Windows Professional
Pro? The base model, I think it's Home,
okay.
whatever the base model is. I think Pro is $200.
Do you think that many people, like there were enough markets for 5 versions of Windows? Like I get Enterprise, and
I don't know.
No.
I
just answered it. No. No.
So anyway, so I wanted to bring this up only because, you know, we've talked a lot about how Microsoft shoots themselves in the foot when it comes to communication and just a lot of bad choices that they made recently, especially, you know, when they came out with the Xbox One last year and a half ago.
Yeah.
So are they making the right moves, I think? I want to know, in your opinion, with this upcoming Windows 10 launch, are they becoming more pro-consumer focused? Or are they just, you know, just doing things and not saying what they're doing and kind of going off?
There's an irony there because while I would say that their consumer products are becoming more consumer focused, their business model still seems to be geared towards enterprise, right? Like if you make Windows free, then they lose a lot of money in licensing. Well, it just turns out that
it's free for people who already have it, though. Not if you buy a new
but not in
computer,
enterprise.
buy it.
Enterprise still has to pay for it, pay a subscription for it. So, you know, and again, that's even more confusing, right? Like, what are the enterprise features specifically? Maybe I don't know enough about it.
But I'm sure when you do enterprise, I'm sure there's a sales group at Microsoft. Like, if you are the head of a company or something, you're a CTO, even at a small company, there's probably a whole different thing you deal with. You're not going into Best Buy and buying a bunch of Windows 10 enterprise copies. I would assume that the business transaction is different, so it's not as straightforward, but they work with their partners to make that work.
Yes, sure. Why not?
So yeah, I mean, do you think that they're making the right moves ahead of this launch by making it free?
I mean, the thing is, they're doing more consumer focused because they're realizing a couple things that. I mean, they've known for a while all their money comes from enterprise. That's where, and I guess selling to OEMs, which I'm sure they still charge OEMs.
Yep.
So, Apple put out OS 10 for free because they don't need to make money off the OS. They make money off their hardware. So Microsoft, though, they're a software company. They can't do that. I mean, the Xbox is a big hardware device, and now it's Surface. And now I guess they'll be making phones. So they're definitely made bigger. But still, at their core, Office and Windows makes so much of their money. But my point is, they are becoming more consumer focused because they kind of can be. And they also know, in order to get developers engaged, they have to be able to, they have to know that they can develop for one system. If they know everybody's developing for Windows 10 by getting everybody from Windows 7 Vista, or Windows 7 and 8 onto 10, it's just going to make it easier for developers.
Yeah.
They have to.
And that is actually Apple's strategy. Is they always announce their update adoption rates. Right?
Yeah.
Because they talk about that in terms for developers, right? So like, hey, 80% of people are using the latest platform. Come develop for us, because you don't have to worry about all this legacy BS. So
yeah, which is why I think it was big that they made it free for Windows 7 users too, because a lot of people were hesitant on moving to Windows 8. Because,
no, it's smart. It's a good move.
And I think the other big piece of this with the universal apps is obviously they've been struggling with Windows Phone and trying to get developers to come on and develop for Windows Phone. So by making this universal app, you can kind of say, look, you have millions of people using Windows, and now you have, I guess. It's more appealing to me now thinking about switching back to Windows Phone, knowing that hopefully there will be more apps once I go back.
Knowing that hopefully,
yes, you heard me correct.
I know that hopefully there will be more.
Yeah.
I pray.
See, the problem is, so where you get that expanded market is mostly Windows devices, right? Because Windows Phone hasn't necessarily gotten that much bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So by having universal apps, the idea is you get more Windows users. You could also say Xbox, but let's set that aside because I think that's going to be very different. The problem is most app innovation is not on Windows. I mean, right now, desktops, the biggest innovation, they're all these big products like Photoshop, Premiere, or Final Cut. That's a lot of people use it at work for those sets of programs, or incredibly esoteric applications. Like if you work in a hospital, maybe you're using Epic. You know, you have these specific programs that are made for Windows. But the thing is, courting developers, you're not courting those big developers. You're not courting Adobe. You're not courting these systems because they'll do it anyway. You're trying to convert smaller developers like, I don't know, Azinga or whoever. And the thing is, I don't think they care to make desktop apps. They want to make mobile apps because that's what that's where consumers are transitioning to. And that makes universal apps, I don't know if they're any more appealing because now you have more Windows users, but what do they? No, the next Snapchat, the next Instagram, the next WhatsApp, none of them are going to come to Windows or OS 10. I mean, there are a lot of people there, but I don't think there's enough that people care about. I think it ends up being an add-on rather than a main platform.
I would agree with that. It's probably an afterthought, but at least it's a
not a bad
plausible
thing.
afterthought now.
I don't think it's a bad thing by any means. I think it's the smart play to make. The problem is whether or not it will actually spur development or it'll just make it a little bit better, because there has to be a gap. And you talk about communication being poor. There's also like this element of people just not giving a shit. Google has the same thing. Google spent a lot of money on promoting Android, and I would argue that Google Play Music is actually a really full-featured service. I don't think the app is as nice, at least from pictures, as Apple Music app, but it has so much. But nobody even knows about it. And even if Google, I bet most people do not even know that Android is Google's operating system when they have a Samsung phone. They're just like, oh, I use a Samsung.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. There's that feeling of nobody cares. Like even if you start doing marketing, people just aren't trying to listen. So they don't. I think Microsoft has a problem. Is there that the old dinosaur, and Google? I guess people just don't know what Google is. They just do all these crazy things like Google Glass and stuff like that. And they just don't know what it is. So the reason why I'm saying that is that communication issue. It's always. I mean, I don't know how they fix that in the short term. I mean. Sure.
Let me ask you this. So I don't know how much you've seen of Windows 10 yet. Like how many features and
I'm looking at it now.
Yes. So I will say personally, after upgrading and using the preview builds, one came out yesterday that has made it significantly just easier, like better to use, like a lot more fluid. So are you guys interested? Are you excited? I guess is a better question of Windows 10. Or you're just like whatever. It's just.
Well, I go back to what Satya Nadella said at one of his speeches recently, where he basically said, he wants people to want to use Windows rather than have to use Windows, and to me, it's still a have to.
Yeah.
I think it's getting better, great, wonderful, but it's still a have to. Like I have this Surface because I have to have a PC at work,
Right.
and so I said, might as well get something interesting to fool around with.
Yeah.
Right. But if I didn't have to, I wouldn't, and actually. I will be buying a MacBook Pro for work. So.
Yeah, Sean?
I'm kind of the same way. I think Windows 10 looks a lot better. There are a lot of things that are cleaner, and I think Windows 8, you could tell it was the OS in transition. They had to marry two systems, and it kind of didn't work. But not marry, however you want to say it. I think Windows 10 looks a lot better, but there still is a feeling that if money's no object and there's a situation, I'm probably going with OS 10. And honestly, I actually use my Chromebook more than anything. However, I mean, there are shortcomings by far to it in that it can't do a lot of main functions. But I would get a MacBook Air right now.
I mean, you know me, like being a total Windows fanboy. Like I'm genuinely excited for Windows 10, especially having.
It looks a lot better. I think it's good.
Yes, I think everything they're doing is in a step in the right direction. Again, it's just a matter of telling people just straight up. It's like I don't know how hard it is to get these messages across. So, like if you have Windows 7 or 8, you're just free.
I never got this, but apparently there's a pop-up
There's a
that's
pop-up
supposed to
that
come
comes
up
up,
and
right,
say
if
you
you
can
have-
upgrade.
yes.
I never got that. I have a legit copy of Windows 8. I don't know why I wouldn't get the pop-up, but I
Did you
never
get it
got
on
that.
this?
No, mine is managed by Enterprise.
Oh,
So-
yeah,
okay.
right. So it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I got it through school, so I don't know if I have like a weird enterprise version. I don't know.
I don't know.
But either way, I was surprised that I never got it. I definitely, once it comes out, I'll definitely upgrade, especially
Yeah.
knowing that it's free.
Yeah.
I don't see, I mean, assuming it's not buggy, I don't see
Yeah,
any
there's
reason
no reason
not
not
to.
to,
Yeah.
right? But again, it's when they still have more to do to get people to say, oh, this is something that I want, rather than okay, this is
Right.
just the new
I mean,
free thing.
It's the default. It's the best option for gaming and other
Yeah.
certain other areas. I was going to say niche, but gaming, even though it's not everybody, it's I feel like it's more than niche. It would
Right.
be
Yeah, it's
disservice
probably
to call it
that.
niche. But for people who absolutely need a PC, I feel like yeah, great, wonderful, it's good. And for the default situation, great, but I don't feel like it's going to steal people away from
Right.
other platforms, you being the exception because you just started using an iPhone.
Yeah,
and you're
only
talking
because there was no
going back.
flagship phone
Yeah.
and waiting for Windows 10 to come
Yeah.
out. So
Stay tuned for our comparison of Windows 10. Does he want to go back? Is he going to stab all Microsoft
it's going
fanboys
to
in
be
the
shot in
back?
the style of Inception.
You wake up, an iPhone, no!
Anyway, that is going to do it.
Windows 10.
That is going to do it for this episode of The Unwind. Thank you so much for watching or listening, depending on how you're digesting this form of media. You can subscribe to us on the iTunes and Stitcher and YouTube. So look up Comics is Block on the YouTube, and you can see us in person.
Get some jazz hands in there.
Yeah.
I want to see jazz hands.
Please share us with your
Why'd
friends.
you make me do that? I wouldn't do that.
Leave us some comments. Let us know what you think about privacy, if you've used Apple Music yet, what's your favorite Christopher Nolan movie, or